Welcome to another episode on the Oak and Rock Fatherhood Podcast. I am your host, Zachary Small, joined by Anthony Migliorino, and today we are joined by special guest, anarchist, father, the founder of disenthralled.me, and the website and the YouTube channel, Patrick Smith. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our chat.
Me as well. So I said anarchist intentionally because people are like, oh no, you got to catch them in those first few seconds. Who are they talking to? One of the things we're constantly stressing here is how we are focused on raising our children to think for themselves, to not follow perceived authority, no blind obedience. And I came across your work recently through Anthony, and man, I can't help but say it is a breath of fresh air to see somebody else speaking to this. You know, and this is something we're looking to do, is not feed the system. That is exactly what your content's about. That's how you're living your life. So for those who don't know, who is Patrick Smith? What is a little bit of the backstory, and how did you come across? We were just talking before we hit record what the principled parenting and how you came to that conclusion that that's the way to raise your children.
Yes. So because you introduced me as an anarchist, I want to clarify that I'm not the commie kind of anarchist. I usually use the term anarcho-capitalist or voluntarist because I want all relationships in my life, from my friends to my employees to my children, to be voluntary. So that's where it comes from. That's what it stems from. There are no natural born rulers. And what that means is that the only way somebody gets authority over you is if you consent to give it to them. So that's what I'm about. And when I say I'm an anarchist, that's what I mean by it. I own myself. I rule myself. And I want everybody around me to have that ownership and power over themselves too. And I don't want to associate voluntary hierarchy's fine, and most commie quote unquote anarchists would say, oh, hierarchy's bad, whatever. That's not it. If it's voluntary, it's good. If it's involuntary, it's bad. I'm sorry, what was your question again? I just wanted to clarify.
That was actually a great clarification. I'm glad you brought it up, because I went back and forth in like 4 different ways, because I was looking at your channel. I was like, all right, what do we go with here? Like, what is the title? You're a man of many titles. And so on this one, specifically, one of the questions, you're on Oak and Rock Fatherhood. Why here? How does this play not just your mindset to how you live your life, but how you parent your children?
Yeah, so we can go as far back in my backstory as you'd like. When I came up Republican, conservative, my first oldest daughter was parented very traditionally, very forcefully, spanking, control, demands, groundings, the whole 9 yards. What you would consider normal parenting, especially in the southern United States, right? And my daughter is, I think she's 23 now. And I started over years ago with 2 new children, post sort of realizing the truth of the world and the government and philosophy, and parented them 180 degrees. So I'm in this weird position where I've done it literally both ways, and I've seen the effects firsthand both ways. Most of the time when you talk to people about, don't hit your kids, have some principles, teach your children that they own themselves and can control their own lives within the bounds of safety, most people don't get it at all, and they think you're just some weird permissive parent that we were joking before the show, they want their kids to go vegan and I guess hug trees all day,
just graze on the grass.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the argument that you're going to let your kids just run in the middle of the street?
Oh yeah, I have a video on my Disenthralled channel. It was audio only. I was at a debate night, and somebody hit me with that when we were talking about spanking. And well, we can go into that if you want, but I was like, wait. So you failed at your job to keep your kids safe by not letting them get into the middle of the street when a car's coming, and you're gonna hit them because you failed to protect your kid? How does that make sense? Like, what is that? Like, yeah. So it's once I realized that I own myself and all relationships and interrelationships need to be voluntary, there's no way you don't also apply that to your children. The thing that makes your relationship with your children unique is that they didn't choose that relationship. They didn't have initial agency in who their parents were and whose house they're growing up in. And that means that we should sort of respect and protect that relationship more because they're not there consensually. So we have to kind of go the extra mile to make sure that, when they get to adulthood, and you ask them and you say, hey, how did you think I did as a parent? Are you happy I was your parent? Are you, tell me, give me your review. We need them to say, yes, I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the things you did and all the decisions you made.
So you said that you've done it both ways. Was there a catalyst for the change, or was it just learning?
I mean, well, that goes. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in IT by trade. I'm a CTO for startup companies. That's usually my daily life. I had set a goal for myself. My dream car was a Corvette, and I had set a goal for myself that I would start my first company, be successful enough to get my first vet. And I achieved that at like 28 years old. And I was so proud of this thing. I track raced it. I put the number 28 on the side of it. Like, this was life goal stuff. Like, and when you achieve a life goal, you need to own that and appreciate it, and then set another one. But anyway, so as soon as I got this vet, I just started getting tons and tons of attention from the heroes, the police officers. And over the course of, I was getting 1-2 tickets a month, and I wasn't driving like an idiot. I wasn't like street racing all over the place. I would go to the racetrack when I wanted to track race, but nevertheless, it was just this constant drain on my bank account and this constant encroachment into my life and my ability to just enjoy this achievement that I had finally made. And it got to the certain point where I was like, okay, there's something up here with this police, these people that I'm told are the protectors of our rights, and that are, without them, chaos would ensue. And it just got to the point where I actually started looking to become a police officer myself for the purposes of protecting myself from the police officers, because the only place you're safe from cops is behind the blue line.
Join the gang,
and so
baby.
I found a way to become what was called a volunteer cop. You go through the full training, you are fully licensed, you are a police officer, and 1 weekend a month you patrol. And so I was like, hey, I found like the back door into being protected from these assholes. And the first step of that process was going on a ride along to begin the training. And so I spent a full day riding along with some police officers, learning about what they do. And I mean, this is a long story short, guys. I don't want to run it too in detail, but the summary is, after that day, I was I was disgusted by what I saw. We just drove around harassing peaceful people all day long. Like, I remember this, we pulled this one mother out of her car because we were just driving along, and they ran the plates, and a warrant came up. It was some BS small warrant for running a stop sign or something like that. And for whatever reason, the cop I was with yanked her out of her car. She's got crying kids in the back seat. All this over like $100 stupid traffic ticket. And I'm just like, there's no way in hell I can do this. There's something fundamentally wrong with not only the laws, but the enforcers in this country. And it really, really disturbed me. And so I went looking for the source of that authority, because obviously everyone around me my entire life had taught me that they have the authority to do this, to control people in society. And not only do they have the authority, but it's for your own good, and you should appreciate it and love and respect them for it. Back the blue. Like, that was me at the time. But these two ideas were completely in conflict with one another. They can't be heroic good guys if they're the number one source of theft and harassment in my life. That doesn't work. So if they have authority, I need to understand where the hell it comes from. And around the same time, I was getting super involved in learning philosophy, studying philosophy. And because of these two things coming together at the same moment, I started with the founding fathers of the country. And I learned about the ideas that they had. And then I learned where they got their ideas. And I read those people. And then I learned where those people got their ideas. And I just went all the way sort of back in time to the ancient Greeks, the Stoics, Aristotle, Plato, I just discovered this passion for philosophy. And so, I guess, long ass story short, the answer is there is no source of this authority. The Constitution ain't it. Only 10% of the population at the time the Constitution was signed had even the capacity to vote yes or no on the Constitution. So best case scenario, no women, no slaves, no black people, and only land-owning white guys. That was the percent of the population that even got asked the question if they wanted to be ruled by this Constitution thing. Everybody else, it didn't matter. They talked big language about the consent of the governed being required. The just powers of the government come from the consent of the governed. But they only had like a tiny percentage of the population that even was given the opportunity to consent to that government. Much less the descendants of those people. Like, just because our parents sign a contract has nothing to do with us. Just because the small percentage of the population 200 years ago consented has no bearing at all on our lives. Consent is individual and sovereign, and no one, not even your parents, can loop you into an agreement that you don't consent to. Not only that, but you can withdraw your consent. Even if you agree to a contract, you can withdraw your consent to the contract. And of course, if there's a penalty clause in the contract, you suffer that, fine. But even if you did consent, which none of us did to the Constitution, not even giving your oath to serve in the military, because you said you were in the military. If you read a book called Lysander Spooner, No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority, he makes very plain arguments as to why, even if you took an oath to join the military, you were taking an oath to no one. There's no one on the other side of that contract that you're taking an oath to. I'm all over the place. I'm digressing.
No,
but
this is
so,
fantastic. Just let it roll, man. That's where it's at. This is the message people need to hear. And honestly, and there's many ways we can go with it, but please finish.
Yeah, how does it tie into parenting?
Yeah. So if there's no non-consensual authorities, then you can't control people through government or on your own. And the thing that public schools do, and the thing that traditional parenting does, from birth, teaches children that there is an involuntary authority at all times and all places over them. We accept, as the species, just how we function, we accept the reality that we're presented with when we enter the world. And if the reality that we're presented with when we enter the world has this overarching, all-controlling authority that do it because I said so, then you incorporate that as part of who you are and as part of your worldview. By default, it's woven in because that's what we do as children. We just incorporate everything around us and make it part of how we see everything. And so when we raise kids like that, they grow up and they become adults. Do you think it's absurd to think that when a kid raised with that kind of entity in their life, when they hit adulthood, it's absurd to think that they wouldn't still expect there to be some authority over them and everything, somebody to protect them and care for them and provide for them. So we train them since birth to expect this authority to be there. And that manifests itself in reality by adults wanting that authority to still be there. And if that authority is invalid, then so too must this authority. And if we want people to realize the truth of the world, the fact that the most dangerous superstition is the belief in authority, then we can't raise them with an authority. We have to raise them as equals, like we want to interact when we're adults. If we want to raise adults that interact with people consensually as equals, then we have to treat them as equals consensually when they're children. It's just so plainly obvious when you connect the dots between creating humans in an environment and then, releasing them into the world as adults. You are creating the world by how you parent. And that's why I call parenting, and this sounds hyperbolic, but I swear to God, I'm serious. Parenting is the strongest, most potent form of activism to change the world that there is.
Yes.
You change your home, how your home works inside your house. You change that, you project that change into the world 18 years later. It's the most powerful form of activism that there is. Did that answer your questions?
All right, let's wrap it up. No, man. I feel like we're just getting going. So yeah. Anthony has been banging that drum for a long time, and I naturally fell into this. He connected the dots for me. I just understood it, just naturally coming into it. I was a child when I came to the conclusion. I'm like, why am I getting hit? You're supposed to love me. You're my dad. This is supposed to be like my family, my safe space. I'm getting wrecked in here. Why? It made no sense. And I'm talking 7, 8, 9 years old. And I just carried that on forward. And then I came across Anthony. He connected these dots. He's like, look, man, the way that many parent, they've created the world we live in. And you have a video out there where you talk about, well, I have these rights, but they're based upon a piece of paper. And the people right now don't care about that piece of paper at all. Your rights,
Yes.
the things that you're doing, the way you're raising your children, that's flesh and blood. And you're giving the authority over them because you're basically just a conduit of their message of control and do as you're told because I said so, because they have that piece of paper saying, oh, well, we're allowed to do this. We're allowed to tell you what to, and nobody's questioning it. And to me, I do not like being told what to do. I don't live in the same reality most people live in. And people, and then I come across Anthony. I'm like, hey, man, yeah, he introduced me to you, Patrick. Let's roll, man. And then we help these men. They see it. They connect the dots, and it is so obvious. They're like, why the hell was I in this system? But the problem is, and to bring it back a little bit, this system is everywhere. It is in everything. It is in our money. It is in our schooling. It is in the way we treat one another. You'll see like middle class dunking on lower class saying, oh, freedom. You'll see people saying, I'm going to stand up to my rights. But nobody questions, why is our tax system the way it is? Why is that money? Why are we operating the system the way we do? Why do we allow certain people to hold more authority? Why do we allow them to operate outside the rules, but we've got to stay in them? Nobody will question that, but they will definitely slam their children if they're ever questioned. Who are you to tell me? You sit down, shut up, you'll be quiet. That's a good kid. Do as you're told, and then just when I want you, I'll come get you. That is one of the most unfortunate aspects and realities. We're building the drones. We're raising the kids while we're speaking.
Yes.
Hey, I'm a free American. And then you sit there and smack your kid for having some sort of rebellious nature. And another one of your videos, it might have been the same one, actually. You said the founding fathers, they were activists and philosophers at the same time. It was such a beautiful like marriage there of men who were like, I'm smart. I understand that this system is probably flawed. So let's do everything we can to control it. Oh, and let's go to war at the same time. We're going to fight for this and build this. We're going to use like oak. You know, we're going to use our brains. That's life. We're going to go out. We're going to think. We're going to try to set this up to help people not manipulate with the power they can get. And the rock. We're going to fight the people who are telling us what to do because they just want to sponge all the money out of us that they can get. So that's the oak and the rock there. And what I'm seeing and what I'm having a hard time connecting with is the example. The world we're living in is a product of the way we've been parenting forever. Smack the kids. They're second-class citizens. Why aren't adults recognizing if we do something different, if we do something principled parenting, peaceful parenting, whatever you want to call it, if we stop hitting the kids, we treat them like the citizens that they are equals, just younger versions of it, we might be able to create a future that we want. The future we're saying that we should have now, where people are free to do as they want. They have the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, whatever they want to do. We can do that if we allow our children to do it. But adults will not do that. The problem is kids aren't hit enough today. That's what's wrong with the world. And we're like, what the fuck? Yeah. These kids are getting, you were hit and now you follow the government. Hitting is the problem. This control is the problem. And so how do we get adults to connect the dots that is so fucking obvious for us right now? And yet they're like completely oblivious. That's one of the biggest challenges, and Anthony of mine, we've had since getting here. They are so resistant. They're fighting for their masters.
Stockholm syndrome, brother.
I think this is a theory. I have no study to back this up off the top of my head. My theory is that there is a subconscious aversion to telling your parents they were wrong in how they raised you. That is a deep psychological thing that is uncomfortable for people. And even if they don't think about it on in their conscious brain, I think it functions at least a little bit unconsciously. To tell someone that it's wrong to hit your kids, you will have better outcomes across the board in every measurable category if you don't hit your kids. That is to tell them that their parents did it wrong, that their parents were, at least to some extent, abusive. For them to agree with you would be for them to tell their own parents that they were at least to some degree abusive. That's not an easy thing for most people to do. Like, most people, like, idolize their parents, at least to some degree. Like, they appreciate their parents. This is my mom. They cut them all kinds of slack. Like, there's legit, like, hardcore abusive parents out there, alcoholics, violent parents out there. And the kids are still like, well, they did the best they could. That's how strong this desire is to not question how our parents did things. We make excuses for legit terrible things. And so I think that's where it comes from. People don't like to even internally say, oh, wow, my parents really did that wrong with me. Like that's hard. That's painful.
I'll go on a complete conspiracy then. So
Okay.
I would say that the system is absolutely set up like this. The people who are running the show, they know that trauma destroys people. And if there were campaigns saying we need to stop hitting kids, it's causing their brains to not develop properly. It's causing trauma, generational trauma. It's making kids less capable of surviving in the world, right? It's making them more dependent. There would be campaigns, we would see it, but I think they know this and they want more of it, right? They want the masses to be pushed down. They want them to be compliant. They don't want anybody stepping out of line and questioning the authority. I think that's where it comes down to. So for me, the abusers, right, if you want to call it the government, the state, Federal Reserve, whoever, they well know that if they can get parents to inflict the abuse, to cause the trauma, their job is going to be much easier, right? They're not going to have to waste resources and time controlling the population. We're going to do it ourselves.
Public schools are a linchpin in that as well. Yeah. Give us your kids and we'll make them walk in line and ask permission to go pee. Are you, can I cuss? I mean, I don't know if
But where does it start?
I broke the barrier. You're good.
Before they even get to public school, Patrick, they have 3 to 5 years with the parents. It's conditioned there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even down to the question of going to school. Yeah, you have to go to school. Why? Because I said so. You just have to. Like every single facet of a kid's life is controlled not by the kid, it's by the parent. And it would be dumb to expect the kids to grow up to expect to have any self-agency. Like, why would you expect? I mean, if you train a dog since birth a certain way, and it hits 2 years old and it's an adult, do you expect it to behave differently? No, you expect it to behave how you trained it to behave. Same thing. Like, that's just how creatures function.
I would say one of the things too, you were talking about questioning your parents. I would say that there's a sense of nationalism to this as well. And I had a little bit of conflict with this initially, but I kind of got over it because I realized reality is what it is. And my previous understanding, that dude didn't know what was going on. This dude does. I was like, yeah, America, rock and roll. And then I started asking questions. Whenever I bring up, hey, internment camps probably weren't a good idea. Slavery, that wasn't great. That was pretty bad. Oh, we handled a lot of the drug war. That's trash. I started asking a lot more questions. People don't like to talk about their nation, their country doing the wrong thing. And when you were talking about parents, I was thinking about the government. The government wouldn't do bad. They're doing the best they can do. They're spending my tax money's being spent on making kids smarter and helping with mental health and people, making our citizens better, whatever, infrastructure. And you look at our infrastructure and it's shit. You look at our schools, it's shit. Our healthcare, it's shit. And I'm like, where the fuck is my money? You took a shit ton of my money through taxes to be put to my good. And I look around and where?
You have roads, right?
This? Who's controlling
you drive
this?
on? You have roads that you drive on?
I live in North Carolina, man. Half of them are dirt.
Yeah, I've never made that connection before. I think you're right, actually. Yeah, that's a good observation. People, well, they're also taught since birth that like you're part of this family. So this is controversial. I say that there's 3 unquestionable authorities in the world. And I say that in a bad way. It's bad that you have unquestionable authorities. Number 1 is government. That's what we're talking about mostly. Number 2 is familial relations. That's when people get triggered. And then number 3, God is an unquestionable authority. We can go into that if you want or not. But the familial one is challenging for people. It enables most of the abuse that's ever happened inside of families in the world is because people have been taught, just like unquestionable authority in government, they've been taught, that's your brother. You can't disown him for abusing you. That's your mother. She may have abused you deeply your entire childhood, but that's your mother. You can't disown her. Like, holding all people to the same standard of behavior to be your friend needs to apply to everyone. Cops, they're just like me. They don't get to abuse me and expect my respect. My family members, if they want my friendship and respect, they've got to treat me how I treat everybody, how I want to be treated, and vice versa. We have to sync up our expectations for relationships and not carve out special niches where people get to abuse us and harm us and have authority over us. That's nonsense in all categories, government, family, whatever.
Yeah, you have to question anybody who's the exception, right? You can't steal, you go to jail, but the government can take 30% of your income. It's not theft, it's taxation. It's the same thing with parenting, right? How many parents tell their kids don't hit other kids, and then they go and they hit them? So to me, it's always the exception. If somebody's telling you what is morality, objective morality, find out what the exception is. Then you know who you shouldn't trust.
You actually have a great video on morality.
Which one?
It was the one where you're saying it's not real. I don't remember the title of it, but you're basically like, morality, the argument, it was 30 seconds of breaking down morality, I believe was the title, or something along those lines.
Objective morality. Yeah, that's a controversial take for a lot of people. They defer their conception of morality to an external authority. Again, this is all linked.
What if you just want to be a good kid? Right? Shouldn't you just listen to your parents, even if it's harming you?
I hate when you ask me those questions. So
I don't mean to make jokes, one thing, but it's so ridiculous when you start ironing things out and you see how mistreated children are in the world. And not only when you point it out in the home, but then you see it take shape in society, right? You see young generations for decades, for eons, that have been emotionally unregulated, don't know how to handle difficult situations, right? It's nothing new what we see now. It's been going on forever. We see massive debts. We see people who are getting divorced at high rates, right? It just continue to escalate. We see more poverty. We see all these things that we say, hey, if you're a good parent and you raise your kid to be self-governing, guess what? They're going to grow up and they're going to not need all this assistance. They're going to be okay. They're going to go out and they're going to do their own thing. And people just can't connect the dots.
Recently, so I recently moved from Rhode Island to North Carolina, and a big story that came out is the Rhode Island children's mental health clinics cannot keep up with kids' mental health. And there was a comment saying, the kids these days, they got to get off their tablets and worrying about these things and go outside. And I was furious.
They got to get off TikTok.
But they're saying it's the kids. Again, the finger goes down to the kids. And I'm like, these kids are breaking inside an environment created by the adults. It's not the kids. And it's so easy. Oh, you're broken because you're fucked up. No, you're broken because I built a world that's trash and I've been dunking you the whole time, and you don't know how to find help because your most inner network hits you, yells at you, does not listen to you. You don't have a seat at the table. You can sit at the table, but you better finish that damn plate. And by the way, don't say anything that will bother me. And if you even attempt to question me, you're going to get the back of my hand. Whoa. It just doesn't sit right. And so with that, it comes the question. And I do want to start shifting towards a little bit solution-based, but I still have one more problem to throw out there. When parents and they see their kids having these issues, I wonder, what is it going to take for the parent to look in the mirror? At what point will a parent hit that point where they go, oh shit, maybe these three dudes talking online, they're not so crazy. I don't know what that level is, but I'll say, because I see it, it's so obvious to me, again, going back to connecting those dots. But as we sit here and they see these children suffer, it's not somebody else's fault that your kid is breaking down. They're operating the world that you built and cultivated for them.
That is why the episode 1 of Peaceful Parenting University addresses that head on, and I talk about that exact point for 15 minutes. That is the foundation. You cannot solve a problem that you cannot see or acknowledge that it exists. And the problem is, who is responsible for your situation? Who is responsible for creating that child? Who's responsible for everything about that child's environment for at least the first 6-7 years before outside influences are more, involved? It's all the parent. And so the culpability for any problem that arises in early childhood rests on precisely no one's shoulders other than the parent. The kid is almost unable to be at fault for anything, especially when they're that young, because all of their influences were controlled by the parent. And taking ownership of that responsibility allows you to interact with your kid differently, for one, because you're less angry at them, because you realize, oh, if they're acting out in some way, it's because I'm doing something inappropriately or not as good as I could, or I'm allowing some influence in that is causing that issue. And if you're always looking at yourself first, what am I doing to contribute or create this issue in my child, then it's a pressure release valve, and it allows you to interact with your kid with a lot more empathy and grace and understanding, because they didn't ask to be there. You put them there, and all their influences, anything that gave them any ideas that they had or any behaviors that they've picked up, that's your fault too. And you got to remember that. Take ownership of that. Be responsible for your actions.
Yeah, that's a hard sell, right? We're gonna tell parents that for the next 20 years, you got to be really principled. You got to improve yourself. You got some inner deep work. You got to heal your trauma. And then maybe in 20 years, it'll show up and you'll see that's how the world will change. You'll see it in your kids. It's tough, man, because we're in a world of instant gratification, right? And that's why parents spank. If a kid, like you were saying, and I know you said you have 3 children,
Mm-hmm.
2
Yes.
younger, 1 older.
Yes.
So I really would like to know, so some of our listeners can get some real practical advice. You know, when kids are acting out, when they're having a temper tantrum, when they're misbehaving, how do we teach kids to emotionally regulate, to start learning that process, so when they do get older, they can handle stress better, they can formulate ideas without being self-defeated? How do you do that in your home?
Kids, especially young, the younger they are, the less they have the physiological capacity to self-regulate emotions. They get caught in emotional feedback loops really easily. And we've all seen this as parents. The kid will begin with frustration over something. Something didn't go the way he wanted. He's trying to play with a toy a certain way and it's not working. He's trying to stack blocks and they keep falling. It usually starts with something annoying or frustrating. And then that builds and it sort of links in on itself. Well, the more frustrated and angry he gets, the less he's able to stack the blocks. And it keeps falling more and more and faster, and he gets more and more frustrated. It's not a failing of his that he's caught in that feedback loop until it escalates to just him crying or yelling or being angry or whatever, like these extreme emotions. He physiologically does not have the brain function to break himself out of that loop. And the way kids learn and grow that physiological brain function is through parenting. When we see them in the situation, these are the steps that I go over when I'm trying to teach people how to do it. The first thing you do is you stop, you slow down, and you make sure that you're in the right place. Take a deep breath. Like, you're here to be the calming, balancing influence to teach them how to handle intense situations. Get down on their level. It's not good to try and fix a situation looking down at somebody. And that works for adults too. Like, if you're having a conflict from somebody and they're sitting down, sit down with them, and it levels the playing field subconsciously. So get down on the floor if they're on the floor playing with blocks. Hold out your arms and say, son, you look very frustrated. You look so angry. Man, it doesn't look like those blocks are stacking well at all. And all you do, you don't talk about yourself. You don't tell them what they should do. You don't tell them to calm down. You don't tell them to shut up and come here. You don't tell them to stop. None of that stuff. You describe what you're seeing. It's called mirroring. You see anger coming from them, frustration coming from them, tears coming from them, sadness. You say, wow, son, you're looking really upset right now. Come here. And you just hold out your arms and you offer to give them a moment to tell you what's going on with them. And they say, man, these blocks they keep falling over. I can't stack them. I don't know why. I keep trying. Oh, man, that's so frustrating, isn't it? Man, I hate it when that happens to me. Oh, that's so frustrating, isn't it? Don't try and teach any lessons. Don't do any of that stuff. Don't try and be a parent. Just absorb. Take it in. Let them give it to you. That's what breaks their brain out of the loop. That's what teaches their brain how to break themselves out of the loop as they grow. Is learning how to offload that, get it out of their brain. And then once they've calmed down, then you can ask questions. Wow, so what was the problem? Well, the blocks, they keep tipping over. Oh, what do you think might make a block tip over easier? I'm just making a situation up, but ask questions. Find out what they were trying to accomplish. Find out how they were trying to accomplish it. Ask leading questions that might help them figure out what they could do different. To make the block stack better. All of this works so much better than I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting old school parenting Patrick onto people, but I get the sense that most parents when they walk in on a situation, their kid's freaking out, they're crying, they're super upset, and they're just trying to stack the blocks. They come up and they're like, here, just give me that. And they take the blocks and they stack them. There, calm down. And, you know, they walk away and they go back to whatever they were doing because they're not paying attention to their kid. Like, maybe that's a little extreme, but there's an element of that, I think, in a lot of parenting. And, well, anyway, that's
good.
That's
So-
what I get. That's what I do.
No punching them, no hitting them with a belt. Treat them like a human. That's what I got from that.
I don't get to hit you if you're upset and not behaving how I want, so I don't get to hit them. Especially,
I see it too. One of the things that I think is lost on parents, and this is possibly more common, is when they try to take that path. I'm not going to hit them, but you're going to tell them it's not that big of a deal. They're just blocks.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
your child, though, that is all they have. They don't have a house. They don't have bills. They don't have long-term relationships. They have blocks and stuffed animals. And 50% of their cares in the world were just knocked down. And so if
Yeah.
I took 50% of your shit, you'd be like, oh man, like, yeah, we got problems. Well, to them, that is a big deal. And so we fail to give our children, you know, that personal sovereignty, not sovereignty, but that personal, the value as to what's important to them. We strip it. It's not a big deal that your toy broke. It's not a big deal that your blocks. And we're constantly telling them, I'll tell you what's valuable and what matters in your life. You don't
Yes.
get to choose. I'll tell you what's important. And they don't I think that is one of the most missed aspects to parenting, where you can connect with your kid, is be like, oh, this is a big deal to you. And it doesn't matter if I find it important, you do. And in your world, this is huge. So let me treat it with the same severity that you're treating it. This is a big deal. Hey, what's that? And like you said, get to their level. How can we fix this? This is huge. These blocks aren't stacking. I didn't buy non-stackable blocks. We better call the manufacturer. I'm going to talk to Tyco or Hasbro or whatever. We're going to get some
Yeah.
stack and block. And you can, that similar to how you were saying project, like that's how I always treated it. I would always turn it to like a joke, like, oh, we're going to handle this. Let's figure it out, because no way are we going to have. And then they're laughing again. They're playing, you know, you win them over. But I think that that's a missed thing, where parents don't place the same value on it because they're not looking at it through the child's eyes. Because what does the child matter? It's just a kid. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's just blocks. Get over it, kid. No, man, that's a human being learning how to balance things, learning how to regulate emotions. And what could be a great learning moment together is lost. It's another frustration, another point of contention, and a big data point that escalates towards bedtime or brushing teeth or dinner time. And it's just these moments, they don't ever have to hit that eruption level. We can vent steam off here and there. Hey, it's cool. Let's connect. Let's figure out these blocks. Now the kid's happy. Now the kid comes to you, hey, just stacking, we're cool, life's good. Now you don't have a screaming kid. Now you can focus on your TPS reports, whatever you're doing.
and they learn something. You taught their brain how to handle intense emotional situations. And not only that, but like if you had a friend and you told your friend, hey, I'm really interested in this thing, let me show you what I did. And their friend's like, oh, it's just blocks. You know, the equivalent of saying that to you. Be like, fuck you, man. Like, I love this stuff. You might, you know, that would hurt the friendship to a degree. Same thing for your kids. It's important. My son loves this video game called Terraria. I hate Terraria. I don't know why it annoys me. I like Minecraft. I like video games. You know, I play them from time to time, especially with my son. I go out of my way to play Terraria with my son because it's really important to him, and he loves this game. And he loves teaching me about this game that I hate. But, you know, he doesn't know that because I'm interested because he's interested. This is what he loves. If we want to have relationships with people, we have to at least be happy when they're happy for something. Like, you're really into this, son. Man, you're good at Terraria. And then like, I guess he got bored of Terraria and he just picked up chess. Like, I swear to God, I'm not a chess player. I've never, it's just never been my thing. It's been really complicated. And I know, like, if I ever wanted to get into it, I would probably have to, like, train for a long time with knowledgeable people. My son just picked up chess and now he's off. We've got him subscriptions to chess training for kids websites. He just legit, my 9-year-old son beat me at chess, like legit, like a week ago. And I wasn't like pulling punches. I was trying to win and he knew some strategy that I had. Dude, I was so proud. Oh man. Anyway, kids are amazing. They're like little, like pure humans. They only give you back what you put into them. And it's the best. It's the most rewarding thing you can do.
No, that's
Yeah,
exactly
when
right,
you
man.
start to live it. And I think, to clarify, we need to make sure we're modeling the behavior, right? If we want our kids to be emotionally regulated, we have to do it as well. And I think what happens is, a lot of the men I speak to, a lot of parents, right? There's theories, there's ideas that I tell them they need to do. and they start to implement them in the home, and they don't get those results right away, and they give up because they haven't built up any resiliency within themselves. And you have to keep doing it, right? When you know something's right and it's going to benefit you in the future, not only do you have to have empathy for your child as you're going through this, right? And be kind to them, and you have to have empathy for yourself. You have to understand that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Anything that's going to be beneficial, you have to work hard to achieve that result. And so many parents, they say, "Oh yeah, okay, don't hit my kid." Well, I did it for a week, and now my son's, still screaming and yelling. Keep going. The
It
benefit
usually gets
is-
worse as soon as you stop it, right?
Well, because your kid's like, "What the hell's going on? Dad's not hitting me anymore."
I can do whatever I want now. Yeah. Another interesting thing you brought up. You brought up changing. We were talking earlier about changing how we parent from how we were parented, and how that can be intense and difficult for people because it's inherently acknowledging your parents messed up, and we often carry damage from our childhood from various things that happened or that was done to us by our forceful parenting parents, let's say. And there's two things I want to mention. Number one, way zoomed out high scope, and I'll start with the narrow scope. The narrow scope would be when you change how you parent your kids, you're doing something internally called reparenting yourself. So if you're in an intense moment and your kid just shattered the TV, and when you were a kid and something valuable got damaged, your dad flipped out, beat you, threw things, smashed the TV, whatever happened to you as a kid. And then now you're in this moment and you're the adult and you're the parent and your kid just did the same thing that happened to you. If you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're going to duplicate your parents' behavior in that moment. But when you don't, when you're aware enough to interrupt yourself and to handle that situation appropriately, you are sort of healing yourself. You are saying with your actions, which speak much louder than words, what should have happened to you when you were a kid and you damaged the TV, let's say. Like, rather than getting beat and abused and yelled at, here's what should have happened. And I'm going to say that with actions. I'm going to say, I'm going to handle it calmly, assertively, whatever needs to happen appropriately. That's really, really healing. There's a psychological method called internal family systems therapy, and people pay specialists to basically run through self-reparenting scenarios just like this. But when we have kids, we're living reparenting. Like, every time something happens, we are redeciding how our parents should have handled us when we were that age. That's healing. And then the macro one, I want to suggest that you guys read. This is not necessarily like a parenting book by any means. It's more like a study. It's called The Origins of War in Child Abuse.
Dude,
Oh, you know it. Okay. All right. Well,
Anthony messed me up with that book, man.
yeah.
He sent me a few passages. I was like, dude, oh my God.
Yeah,
It just shows, it illustrates what we were already talking about. The environment, the home that we create inside our house for our kids projects itself onto the world.
That's actually a great point, and it brings something up that I wanted to come back on actually perfectly. So one of the things, actually, before we get to that, the micro moment you were just describing, I didn't realize that there was a name for that or really what it was. But I told you I came from a home of corporal punishment, and I don't have that at all. And when things happen, I mean, I'm talking like a baseball gets hit through a window, a TV gets knocked down and broken, like whatever happens, there's like, it's almost like a movie scene where it hits me. There's this initial reaction and it stops, and I stop it. In my head, it feels like an hour, but it's probably 2 seconds. I'm like, all right. And then I engage. It's like I get rid of that response that I had in me, and I do not answer it. It's like a hard stop. It hits a wall. I then process what's happening, and then I handle like, hey, we're good, man. It's good hit. You must have hit that ball really hard to hit it through the window. It's just a window. We'll replace it. That was how I responded. But in my head, I was like, the freak out was there. I just didn't allow it to come out, because when I broke the window, there was a freak out, and so it's interesting. I've never really known kind of what it was. I thought it was just a knee-jerk reaction to an emotion, but it was my childhood moment coming out that I had to hard no. we're not doing that. We're changing things here. So actually, I appreciate bringing that up because I'm going to look more into that. That's really interesting.
It's literally how it works. How you're parented determines how you initially react to emergency stimulus like that. Like, it's the default program that's installed. And the thing that you talk about where it hits a wall and something stops it, and you're able to get that breath, that moment to just reset yourself. That's your frontal lobe. And it's important to remember that capacity in your frontal lobe does not exist sometimes until 13, 14, 15, 16 years old in children. And so when they have strong emotions and strong stimulus like that, and they react in stupid or, drastic ways, it's because they literally don't have that capacity that we do as adults. And when you see adults with that capacity not using it, you're like, come on, you're a grown up. Like, you need to control yourself. Just because some crazy stuff happened, that's still on you, man. You have to stop yourself from acting like that. Grow up.
No, and there's future benefits to this. So you guys were both describing a accident where a window or a TV gets broken. But even if your kid has a problem that they're dealing with, right? Something that's difficult to them, that's upsetting them, worrying them, they're getting anxious, they're getting stressed out. And you feed off of that. You get angry at them, right? They might not clean their room because they're depressed or they're sad. And then you just apply more pressure. You break that trust with your kid, right? There's nothing being built there. You're actually distancing them. And I tell dads this all the time. Later on in life, when they're in a tough spot, right? If their friend's drinking and driving and they decide, I'm not going to go in a car with them, I can call dad. Because in those little moments when they were younger, you kept your composure. You just did what Zach said, right? You were calm. You showed them the example of what it means to be a good man. And they learn, and this goes back to the whole dysfunction in society, but kids learn what men they can trust from when they're younger. You have to be that example. And then I believe kids who grow up and go out into the world, there's not going to be a hatred for men and masculinity that we see today in this world.
Yeah. Step one is actually having a father in the home to fix that problem.
That's a whole nother discussion.
I don't know if we want to go there, but yeah, you kind of need a father if you want people to grow up to respect fathers. Like, well, why would people that have never had one value them?
Yeah.
And
We've
I'm
been
kind of talking to myself there.
Building the world, building the future, building the reality. And I had a
Yeah.
conversation today with a guy, and we were talking about youth sports. I coach my son's baseball team, and I was like, dude, I get to their level and on an individual basis and build them up. And we were talking about how a huge issue there is fathers who are voluntold to coach, or they're like, all right, nobody else is doing, I'll volunteer. They coach like a 9U team based off the last lesson they had, which is probably high school. And so you're bringing these high school lessons of work hard or push yourself to a 9-year-old who's like, I don't even know how to hit the ball. You're yelling at me for the thing I can't do because I'm here to learn, and you think I should already know this. And let's twist that a little bit. Parents are parenting our children in the last way they remember growing up. These are the lessons. These were the values. You talk about free market. You talk about crypto. You speak a lot about what's happening in the world today. And I was wondering, has that influenced the way you're parenting your children with their understanding of money, understanding of how to interact with people, relationships? Things have changed quite a bit. Have you have you catered your parenting system and style to the world you see nowadays as opposed to how it was when you were a child?
Yes. I lead with honesty, tempered by an understanding of how old they are. That's pretty much it. Like, I never lie. I don't intentionally hide things, but if I'm asked a question, I try and not hide the truth of the situation. And so I guess the best example of that is Cops again, right? Like, my kids, all cartoons and all kid content, teaches us that cops are always there to help. They're good people that are just there to fix problems, catch the bad guys. And then, when my kids ask questions of like, I don't know, I'll get a ticket or something. The cops will pull us over. I'll be like, yeah, we have to stop. Otherwise they might put me in a cage, if I don't stop the car when they put their lights on. Well, why would they put you in a cage? Well, they want me to stop at that red stop sign. And my kids just don't understand. Like, well, like, why is that the rule? Who made that rule? Well, they did. Well, they don't understand because we function in our home by agreement, and everybody outside of our home functions by demand. And what's another good example?
You're killing
son.
some sacred cows here. Like going after the cops, sacred cow. Like you can't talk about that. The government, sacred cow. Like it's incredible how people put these things in these off limit categories. I'm the same as you. Like there's nothing that's off limits. Literally nothing.
Oh.
What
Here's
about
a more
explaining
normal
to
one.
your kids why they have to wear a mask to save everybody else?
My kids didn't wear masks.
My kids didn't wear a mask. Yeah,
People
no,
trip out when they ask me why. Like, oh, you were a military man. You must be, authoritarian. My kids ask me why all the time. Well, why do I have to do this? I'll explain it to them. I don't say, don't you question me. I say, oh, well, here's why I would like to do this. Well, what about that way? Okay, you can try it that way. I recommend this way. And then when they try it their way and it's 3 times as hard, hey, well, now you know why I said go this way.
Anybody that says that about service, people that were in the armed services, were never in the armed services. My Discord server where we talk about philosophy is like half ex-military, because these are the freedom-loving people
in the system,
that
man.
put their ass on the line and were subjected to the government's idea of freedom and authority. Like they know more than most people. So like I consider like service people like low-hanging fruit when it comes to talking about liberty, because they get it. They get the inefficiency and abuse of government and how it does nothing good at all. And they get what it means to put their life on the line for a principle that they believe in, which is what we need more of in the world too. Anyway, so the story I wanted to tell you was my son learned the word fuck, and this is a thing
Where'd he
that
learn
most
that
parents. Me. It was my fault. Yeah. So he, as most kids do, when they learn a new bad word, they overuse it. Just F this, F that, F everything. He'll be playing a video game. He doesn't even know how to use it properly, and he's just saying it to release frustration and to learn how to say the word. And we're starting to coach him. We're like, hey, outside of our house, some people decide to feel upset when kids use that word. So like if you go to grandma's house and if you use that word, she will choose to be uncomfortable and she will choose to feel upset. And she might not want you to say that in her house. And it's her house. It's her property. She gets to make the rules over there. So if you want to go to grandma's house, you should consider not using that word because she might choose to feel uncomfortable. And there's several things in what I'm saying here that you're probably picking up on that's different how most people talk about how people react to things. Most people say, if you say the word fuck, that will make them feel blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that because that's not how feelings work. I'm saying they're choosing to feel a certain way when you say the word fuck. It puts the agency where it exists with the person, right? Anyway, so my son goes up the road to play at a friend's house in the driveway. They're a very religious, conservative house. F this, F that, he's having a blast. Mother comes out, loses her shit, says, you can't talk like that here. This, not in my house. You can't do that here. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just go over there. No, excuse me. The first thing he said was, and he had it wrong. The first thing he said was, it's my mouth. I can use it however I want. He literally said, it's my mouth. It's my body. I can use it however I want, which is that is fundamental. That's what we're trying to teach our kids. You own yourself. You control yourself. And then she asserted her property rights and said, well, you can't use your body like that here on my property. And he said, you're right. Okay, I'm going to go over here and do it. And so he walked over to the sidewalk neighboring house and asked if the kids wanted to come play with him over there off her property because he just didn't want to be controlled. He refused to be controlled in that way. Turns out the mom didn't want her kids playing with him if he was going to talk like that. And he came home very dejected and very sad and emotional. And he was starting to work himself up into one of those loop situations. And that was one of those moments where, you just slow down and you mirror the emotions back. Whoa, what happened? You're really upset right now. You're sad. What happened? And he's like, oh, this mom won't let me play with her kids anymore. Well, why? Well, she said I can't say, F over there at her house. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's her property. She can make those rules. So what are you going to do about it? He's like, well, I really want to play with those kids. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? He's like, well, I guess I won't say F when I'm over there. And now he plays with them, once a week or something like that. It's all about control yourself, own yourself, make your choices, associate with people according to the rights involved.
And he
So my
learned
kid-
something. He learned
He
he
did!
taught himself something. That's how it happened. That's how it's supposed to happen.
Yes.
He learned
Yeah.
natural consequences without force, without anybody hurting him or yelling at him. And he learned to a degree, he learned how to negotiate.
And
I'll trade you kickball for no fucks.
he comes home later the day, saying freak, because apparently that's what the religious people is. It's okay to say freak, but not fuck. And so he started saying freak all the time, and that annoys me because I feel like he's capitulating to some neighbor. But whatever. Hey, like it's his decision. Like he could
Say your
It's
fuck,
his body.
son.
What the fuck, you freak?
Yeah,
No, that's awesome, man. That's a good story.
That's just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, what else we got? How else can we help fathers here today, Patrick? What is one basic thing? Like, what's the most important thing if you're a dad and you're trying to get back on the right track? And
If you're already a dad,
if
I mean,
you're
the most
already a
important
dad,
thing is picking the right woman to become a dad with. That's the
Whoa.
number one thing. Because if you pick the wrong one, you're not going to have near as much agency to create the environment in your home that you need to create.
That's an excellent point. I didn't expect you to say that.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's in the best. I mean that in the best way. That's where it starts. Absolutely. If you get a woman
Yeah.
who's online and that's a conversation to be had. Hey, do you want to have kids? Yes. All right, cool. How do you want to raise those kids? Well, like this.
Yes.
Ooh, you're either like, no, I'm more leaning towards this. Like, where do you see that? Oh, I never thought about it. Well, let me talk to you about here's how, why, what. Oh yeah, definitely. Cool. Move forward.
And this stuff takes a long time. Like, I think people get married too young and too quickly. Like, I mean, people have been saying this stuff for hundreds of years, right? But like, seriously, like, take a couple years, get to know the person, talk about your ideals and your principles, and make sure that it's compatible before you create life. Because like one of the worst things you can do to that life after you create it is to end up with only one parent. And as a man, it might not be you, probably won't be you. And so if you pick a woman with compromised principles or, an inability to control herself or childhood trauma that's causing her to be damaged in a way that's making her unhealthy, you're picking that for your child if you're going to create a kid. And this is part of being a man, is like deferring gratification to make the hard choices. Like, don't get your dick wet until you've made sure that, you have a good woman worthy of it.
yeah.
I'm sorry if
Don't
I'm
base it
talking
on this. No,
inappropriately
don't
your
base it
channel,
on the
but-
sex. Go and meet her family, right? See what her dad's like. See what her mom's
Sure.
like. Go
Yeah.
go find out what the red flags are. If you're with her and she's always trying to manipulate you, of course she's going to manipulate your kids, right? Of course there's going to be something there that is not going to be feasible to what your plans are for the future. I mean, I'm against all that. I started before marriage and we had to grind it out for years, but it usually doesn't work, right? It usually doesn't work like that. And with marriage, with families, prevention is key. Educating yourself, reading a parenting book, listening to podcasts on not just parenting, but how to be a better man, how to have values in your life. Like, these are all things that are going to lead you to success. And I know this topic, peaceful parenting, respectful parenting, principled parenting, it's not hard hitting, right? People aren't like, oh, let me figure out how to be a better dad. It's not mainstream yet. And so many people waste so much time on how can you make money, right? How can you get the Corvette? Like, this is what takes the stage. And what I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing this, Patrick, but me and Zach, we run Twitter Spaces every day during the week.
Oh, really?
We offer up our time. We talk. It's called Dad's Day. We're constantly. Zach has a private group with 200 men in it, and I host Thursday night fatherhood discussions. We've been doing this for years, and we're starting to see a change. We're starting to see a shift. Like, there's more men, as they fix themselves, they want to fix their family. They want to be better to their kids. So it's a great thing to see. And I don't know, in the volunteerist community, are you seeing a lot of this also?
Yes, especially over the past 10 years. And I think Molyneux, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
Old school Molyneux made a very strong peaceful parenting push in the
Oh, yeah.
libertarian community.
Bomb in the brain changed my life.
And he was very disappointed with how slowly it kind of had an uptake amongst liberty-minded people. And I actually think a lot of normies picked it up faster than libertarians for some reason. But I think it's finally kind of taking off. There's not many times where I mention it these days and I don't get a bunch of people agreeing with me. I think it's just so obvious. Like from a libertarian perspective, even just not even trying to be a parent, like the logic that we talked about of creating the future world in your home, it's so obvious that libertarians that want to make the world a more free place have to realize that they have to create a more free place in their homes. Like that's just it.
Yeah. Well, they have to want to be a
get
free man, right? That's where it
yes,
starts. You have to want to be self-governing, have individual rights, independence, and you have to be able to be strong enough to give that to your kids, right? It's not going to work the other way around.
and it's good that you use the word strong because it's not easy. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard sometimes to exist in a home with people that have their own mind and their own will and their own body and property. Like my kids own their own stuff. And, we have, I put rules on my home and certain rooms in my home. And so sometimes they have to get their stuff out of my rooms when I need it cleaned because that's my property, but it's their, I don't steal their stuff when they misbehave. Most people would, call that
Take things away.
They would
Yep.
take things away or ban them from, whatever. It's, it's hard. And because we weren't parented that way, we don't have all those initial reactions that we should have gotten from our parents. Like we should have been parented this way. And our initial reaction when the TV gets destroyed should be, a calm, assertive handling of the situation rather than a freak out. But we don't have that. So we're giving that to our kids and it's going to be, I can't wait to see my kids have kids. Oh, it's going to be so rewarding.
Dude, I had that exact, like that place you went there, just kind of like visualizing it. I had that conversation with my wife yesterday. I was like, I am the product of somebody turning things around. I don't know what it looks like to start out that way. I have no idea what my kid, my son, I have a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. I don't know what they're going to be like, but I cannot fucking wait, man. Like they're going to be so much further than I even know, like the levels that exist because they've not had to dig out of the holes I fell into. They'll have their own obstacles, their own challenges, but I can't wait to see like what they do and where they go and what they choose to take on and like what their mission is. It's that place you went for a second, like just picturing your son or your children, the same. Like that's where I go. I'm like, dude, this is going to be an amazing thing to watch. And I'll be in there like putting extra booster rockets on them the whole way. Keep going, little guys.
Yeah. And don't use this as an excuse by any means. Because I think excuses make men weak and weak in the worst possible ways. But we're not perfect. And when we do make mistakes, an analogy that really helps me get through when we mess up is a football analogy that I heard from Glenn Beck 15 years ago. And it just makes sense. So ignore the source. Who cares about the source? Whatever. I used to have a lot of, let's not go into Glenn Beck. So the analogy was, as a parent, it's our job to pick the ball up at one end of the field where our parents left it and then run that motherfucker as far down the field as we can to give our kids the best hope and shot and parenting experience that we possibly can. And we're probably not going to get it all the way to the end zone, but our job is to run it as far as we can and do the best job that we can so that when we hand it off to them and they have kids, they can pick it up from that point and run it as far as they can. And if we do that enough generations, the world is going to be a very different place. And so even though we might mess up and we might not get all the way to the end zone, we got to run that ball and we got to keep running and not give up and not like lose hope. Like we can do this. And we're running this ball farther than any generation previous to us has run it. If you look at especially the origin of war and child abuse, you will learn how parenting was done for the vast majority of the history of the human species. And it was sickening. It's only in the past several hundred years have we really turned it around and started treating our kids differently than have ever been treated before. And we have run that ball farther than ever. And it's our generation. We're right there. We're hitting the end zone. It's really a hell of a time to be alive when it comes to parenting.
So
this is the generation.
I'm sure you know the stats, right? 80 to 90% of people in the United States still spank their kids. They're still using corporal punishment spanking. And it's weird to me that what you just described, right? The maybe it's been 10 years that a small percentage of children are not hit now. Very small percentage. Maybe it's like a 5% less, 10, maybe 10% less. And people are a little bit aware of that. They see it, right? You talk, oh, don't hit your kids. And they're like, well, look what happens when you don't hit your kids. Look at the world now. This is what you get. And I'm like, man, it doesn't happen that fast. Do you know how many generations it's going to take for this to show up? Like you just said, we have to do it with our kids. Our kids are going to do it with their kids. And then eventually you'll see the effects, right? You'll see my great grandkids saying, I don't need to go and vote. Why am I going to vote for who tells me how to live my life? And that's when things start to change. But it's amazing to me how people automatically assume that just because there's a few people speaking out against it, that's the reason for the chaos in the world.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I mean, don't be like a vegan and constantly bring it up around people, but like people need to know. Like people need to know. Like if somebody says, "What do you mean you don't spank your kids?" Be like, "Dude, my kids didn't even see one adult yell at another adult until they were 5 years old."
Yep.
Like the world can be different, and my kids are doing great. Like your notions of how you were parented are mostly wrong, and we can do better, and I'm happy to help you. And another thing, like another great analogy is just like to treat people like your friends, treat your kid like your friends. Like if your kid's having trouble figuring out how to clean their room, and imagine like one of your friends called you up and be like, dude, I can't figure out how to get my garage clean. It's so frustrating. What would you do? Would you be like, well, you better just keep working until it's done?
I would threaten them with violence.
Yeah, I'm gonna come over there and hit you if you don't get it done by 9 p.m. But by bedtime. No, you'd be like, dude, you need help? I'll bring some beers and some pizza, and we'll get your garage clean this weekend. That's what you do with your kids. You help them. Well, maybe not with the beers, but yeah, like. Anyway, treat all your relationships in your life the same, because there are no higher moral authorities in any human alive. No one is your boss unless you choose them to be, and that goes for your kids, that goes for your family, and that goes for people wearing badges and funny costumes.
Yeah, just stop using violence. Right. That to me, that's the first step. And if I think about that, I talk to parents, like you said, I say, don't stop hitting your kids. And they're like, oh, don't tell me how to raise my kids. I'm going to hit my kids if I want. Right. Violence is necessary. I hear that all the time. And I'm like, you're telling me violence is necessary. You're 5 times the size of your child. You're going to physically hit them. But these guys in funny suits with little IRS badges are going to come and take 30% of your income, and you don't resort to violence. You're okay with that. Makes perfect sense.
I love every time you bring that up. Because I just wait to see the response and everybody's crickets. I'm like, I told you, stop fucking with this guy. He's going to bring it up.
I have a question for you. Can I ask you guys a question? I have a scenario. I want to see how you guys would handle it, because this is not an easy one. You're in a restaurant with your family, and at a table adjacent to yours, one of the kids at the table, is crying or something, and the parent stands up, grabs their kid, and starts swatting him. What do you do?
I would intervene.
How?
I would go up and be like, hey, what's going on? Are we good? I would start talking like, hey, if the kid's crying, I got this. Let's entertain them. I would give them something. Hey, here's for your kid. Let's stop this. The kid's just distracted. The kid's tired. Hey, do you want to go outside? I think
this is none of your business. What are you doing? Get out of here.
Then I'm confronting the dad. I have no problem squaring up on the dad. And I'm not saying let's throw down in the fucking restaurant. Like, we're not going to beat each other in the Olive Garden. But most men are conflict averse. You speak up and just intervene into this. Hey, man, now it's off the kid. Now it's on me. And now we can just speak. Hey, I get it. Let's go outside. Let's relax. Your kid seems like he's having a bad day. I would not let a kid get hit in front of me.
So what if they told you to, fuck off? Like, leave us alone. This is none of your business.
He's going to stop hitting the kid. He's going to be angry. He's not going to go back to spanking the kid. So, yeah, fuck off. Yeah, I'm a pussy. I'll go sit down now. And now he'll sit down with his family. I told him. That's fine. I'm a bitch. You're the king. Good job, man. But he's not hitting the kid anymore.
I would hand him a business card, and I would be like, look, dude, I can help you fix that. Call me if you need me.
Disenthrallme.com. Go talk to Patrick.
Interesting. These are great answers, guys. Like, here's what I have done.
Have you? I was going to say, have you been in that position? Because I have before.
A couple times. I'm in Texas, man. People beat their kids in it, and people will look you in the eye and say you're a bad parent if you don't hit your kids. Like, this is Texas.
I've had that conversation. It's wild.
It was a breakfast restaurant, And this is important for your children, right? They need to see their father stand up to bad things going on around them and protecting people.
Yep.
That's why the only answer I don't like from people is, well, it's none of my business. Maybe I'll do nothing, or maybe I'll get my kids out of there. That is the wrong fucking answer. You have to set an example for your children. How are you as a father, as a man, supposed to handle innocence getting hurt around you? Are you supposed to shy away, not look at it, guys, or
let him beat his wife? He can beat his wife. She probably got out of line. That's okay. Oh, it's a kid though, so that's allowed because it's a child. Fair game. I don't see.
I won't
difference,
even
man.
let.
If it was a wife, if it was a child, there's no difference to me.
Yeah, I don't. I say something when people are rude to waiters or waitresses that are in my party. I'm like, what are you doing? Come on, have some respect, have some common courtesy.
So if it's a really bad situation in a loud restaurant, what I have done, and I don't know if this is the best strategy, I want your feedback, is I loudly say, "You're hurting them. Stop!" Everybody in the restaurant immediately looks at them. Everyone, all eyes are on them, and they're worried that they're hurting their child. It immediately stops what they're doing.
Perfect.
That's actually better.
Yeah,
I try to handle it quietly, like, hey, man to man. You're just like, hey, everybody, look at that douchebag.
The second thing I say immediately after that is I look at the kid and I say, "Are you okay?" Does two things. Number one, it stops the abuse. And number two, it tells the kid that that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'm worried about you. You're not supposed to be treated like this. This is not right. Are you okay? Like empathy, connection. Like those are the two things I do.
That's good. I'm going to purposefully try to be in a fucked up spot now to try to practice that.
Dude, these are the things
like, be like, let me go to
like, let it happen. Like, come on. I want to go talk to you guys and tell them what I did.
Yeah.
Saving one kid at a time.
The two times that's happened, that has worked very well. There was no confrontation. They didn't even really say anything because they were so immediately embarrassed by all the eyes in the restaurant looking at them as a potential child abuser. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, you've seen the social experiments where, like, if a man's hitting a woman out in public, everybody runs over to stop. Or if the woman's hitting the man, everybody just walks by. They don't care.
Nobody cares. I'm
sure the same thing would happen with a child, right? If a child's getting hit, people are just going to walk by. Yeah, it's normal. They're disciplining him. That kid must be really bad.
Yep.
Insanity.
All
Gentlemen,
right,
it's been a pleasure.
I was going to say, man, so I dove into the content. I had a great time. I was expecting this to be a fantastic discussion, and it surpassed all of it. You know, and I feel like there's so many more things, but I don't have the time to sit here and go through all the stuff you planted in my head. And I've still got to deal with that whole initial reaction thing. So it was great having you on. We have links to disenthrall.me. We have links to the Disenthrall YouTube channel. Is there anywhere else that people can find you if they want to touch base and check more out about your work?
The Peaceful Parenting stuff is on the YouTube channel, Peaceful Parenting University. So that's where I put all of that content. If you want the philosophy and sort of the activism, like we break laws to feed the homeless armed so the cops leave us alone.
Great video.
You know, that kind of activism, that's all on Disenthrall. Yeah, that's what we do. And I'm happy to come back anytime, man, if you have more stuff you want to talk about.
No, I definitely do. You know, and I was trying to find the name of that video, but the one where you went, it was, I can't think of the title, where you went to help the homeless, but you weren't allowed to. What was that one called?
No, to feed the homeless. Yeah.
Feed the need.
Feed the need. We do that every December. You guys are welcome to join us too. If you want to come out this December, first Saturday in December, we're going to be doing it again.
That's fantastic.
You're in Texas?
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Dallas. Yep. Dallas, Texas.
Great stuff.
All right. We got to go pay a visit to Phil.
Yeah, there we go. We got a few friends down in Texas. We'll make it a thing. Get the guys together. All right,
Hell
Patrick. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. Anthony, another one down, brother. For everybody that tuned in, make sure you check out Patrick's work. Make sure you've liked, subscribed, spread the good word. The only way this spreads is if you take it and you start removing the taboo around parenting, which means talking about it and sharing that, hey, I'm a guy who will talk about this and put it on his timeline. So put it out there and get the discussion going. It doesn't have to be with us. You can start talking to your friends. The more men, the more parents, women and too, we have talking about this, the more chance these children have at grabbing a rope and maybe some things change in their life. And guess what? Why do we care? Because our kids growing up with your kids. So do better, join the movement, and get active. Be peaceful, stay present. You guys stay well. Thanks for tuning in.